Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels with me, Martin Fish, joined by Jill and Sean.
Hi.
This week I'm going to catch up with an old friend, Adam Tomlinson, who's a landscape designer. We're going to find out all about laying patios.
And also we've got some listeners' questions that Martin's going to be answering. Listeners who obviously emailed us at info@potsandtrowels.com. We're going to hear about straightening a Rowan tree. We've got some questions about our latest apple tree video, and all of that's coming up soon.
And Martin's got some jobs for us to be doing, as always, including how to make your patio look gorgeous once it's all been finished off. But first, let's catch up with Adam, because I think you interrupted him in the middle of his work, didn't you?
Adam, for as long as I've known you, which is probably 30 plus years, you've been a landscaper, specialising in hard landscaping, decorative paving. You make an excellent job, well known in the area for the quality work that you do. But before you became a landscaper, you had a different career. So tell us about that first.
Well, I started out, I was destined to work outside, and I was wanted to go into farming, to be honest. And I went to Brackenhurst to study and went down that route for 2 years, which then I later moved into farm buildings, and then later, through the help from the government, set up on my own and led me down the path of landscape gardening.
Okay, so was that, working, doing the farm buildings and sort of that construction work that made you think you wanted to get into the garden side of construction?
Yes, definitely. I enjoyed that side of it, and I was doing a lot of brickwork and concreting, etc., and machinery driving and things like that really interested me, and I thought I'd take that as a career path.
Yeah, so when you were training at Brackenhurst, that was agriculture. I think you did a HND, didn't you? Higher National Diploma. So you wouldn't have done much in the way of bricklaying and paving there. So was that sort of just learnt on the job?
Well, basically, yeah, that was learnt on the job in David Allen, who I worked for. He was a very good teacher, and I did enjoy doing it. It's just that an opportunity arose that I could do it for myself rather than for somebody else, which at that time I chose to take that route.
Yeah, and you don't do a lot of the soft landscaping, the planting. You do a little bit, but you tend to leave that to others. It is the hard landscape. So for those that don't know, what is a hard landscape? What does it entail?
Well, basically it's to excavate the garden to the correct levels, etc., and we also put the sub base down and the foundations for any walls or stonework or anything like that, and then obviously we lay the patios, the paths, the brickwork, decking. We do the preparation for the soft landscaping, and we do the turfing, aspect of it, but I'm not specialist in the planting side, so normally an outside contractor would come in to work alongside us, and we help him put them in, basically.
And I suppose some of the work that you do has been designed by a landscape architect or a designer, so then you work to their plans and follow that through.
Yeah, that's correct. We've worked with quite a few over the years, and we obviously get them involved at the very start, and they come up with the concept of the garden. Again, not one of my strengths, but my strength will be in seeing the end product, and I can see it once it's in black and white on canvas, really.
Yeah. And I suppose, having done it for so long, you're great at solving problems, because sometimes you see designs and a landscape architect or designer will put an idea forward, but in practice it doesn't always work, does it? So do you very often have to sort of change it and manipulate it to make it practical and work?
Yeah, we do change it to make it work. Normally that involves the architects actually drawing it, because they're quite easily upset. So you have to sort of work alongside them, but sometimes their strength's in the design and our strengths is in putting it together, and they don't fully understand that all the time, but most of the ones I work with over the years have been pretty good, to be fair.
Yeah, and it's fair to say what you do is hard work, isn't it? It's physical graft. I know you can use mini diggers and things, but when it actually comes to laying paving, there's no mechanical way of doing it. It's all muscle.
Well, basically, it's my gym membership. I enjoy doing it. I've enjoyed it. I've been thankful of good health as well over the years, so that certainly helps. But also, each garden is very different, so you get to meet a lot of nice, different people, and no two gardens are the same. So each one will have its individual challenges. I think as years have gone by, and products are more, more the more varied way of doing it, I think nowadays there's a lot more decisions to be made than there used to be.
Yeah, I suppose there is. Yeah, but I mean, what you do is, excellent, because you're completing the garden, except for the planting, aren't you? You're turning what can be a mud bath into a beautifully landscaped area. So it's a lot of work. We've had a really wet winter, very, very wet, but wet year really. How does that affect your work?
Well, basically, each job then sometimes they do fall a little behind with that because you are governed by the weather quite a little bit. And this has been over the 30 odd plus years I've been doing it. This has probably been the hardest, but you just sometimes have to grin and bear it and do the best you can. I think the hardest thing is it does tend to make more of a mess generally everywhere, which then, adds time to your job to make sure it's all clean as you leave.
Yeah, but is that why you always wear shorts? Because your legs dry out quicker than wet trousers?
That must be it, because I'm not made of paper.
No, exactly. Good. Right, well, what we want to do is just chat about trends in design and materials and a few tips on how people can look after their patio. So we'll come back to you in a couple of minutes, Adam.
Oh, well, before I even talk about what I've just heard, the birds at your end of the line are really, really loud today. So it's a really nice atmospheric sound, actually. But just to let you know, everybody, we haven't dubbed those on.
No,
those are real,
no.
actual live birds.
Well,
Yes.
we're sitting in our little studio office. It's everything, really. And it's quite a nice, pleasant day. So we've got the door
door's
open.
open.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a shame though, because
Well,
we've got to put the blind down because the sun's shining through and we can't see the screen. So
Which is quite relevant, actually, because the end of that chat, you were saying about the weather and how we don't know. This is the UK. You don't know how predictable. You can't predict anything in the UK weather, can you?
no, you've got to take advantage of it when we've got the nice weather. We've got to be out on the patio.
Well, exactly. And, we officially have had the wettest 18 months on record, haven't we? We've had a lot of rain in the last 18 months. So, But we're hoping that now the patio is
Yes.
finished, we can actually use it this summer.
Well, it's not quite finished.
It's
is
got
it?
a little bit of walling to
Yeah.
go around it, which
and
we're
then
going
the
to
exciting bit, then we're going to do the planting, aren't we, around it? 'Cause
Yes.
we've made the patio sort of across the kitchen and the dining room at the back of the house. And then, but we've had, because the levels weren't right, so we've had to do a little retaining wall, and then we're going to do some beds going into the lawn,
Yeah,
aren't we?
so the steps leading up to
Yeah.
the lawn and then beds. So you'll sit as if you're immersed in foliage and flowers. That's the plan, Sean.
And there's a whole
I
lot
like
of
it, I like
shrubs and plants still in our store area. So I've got a sneaky feeling
gonna
that
come
there
out,
are
are they?
more than we actually
There
need.
may be a
for
few
the-
more, actually, yes. Might have to
we might have a sale outside our house.
You could
of
have a little
excess
trestle
plants.
table out
Yeah.
front.
This is what happens when you go to too many flower shows.
I think I could plant the garden twice.
Well, that transition between patio and lawn in our case, where we, in our house, is, I think, a bit messy in our own, it's like if you cut the lawn too short in our house, you can see where the concrete is that's holding the patio stones.
Right.
We've got York stone here. And I don't know what to do about that because the lawn's small enough anyway that I don't feel like I can put another container sort of row in or whatever, a bed in. So I have to have a think about that. Any top tips?
Well, I think we
Maybe
need to
some
come out and do a
mechanism?
podcast and have a look, don't we? I think a live
That's it,
podcast
that's
from
it.
Sean's garden and
But you,
garden
again,
fakes.
because our levels were a bit unusual, weren't they? You've had to lift up the lawn a little bit to
yeah, I mean the lawn
meet the
wasn't
patio.
level, but obviously the patio step is level,
Yeah.
so we've had to put the step in, and then I've lifted the lawn back several meters.
And
stripped
people
it
who are
back.
on Instagram can see that you showed some rolling
Yes,
back.
Exactly.
roly-poly turf,
on your
yeah.
Put some
Instagram.
new soil in to level it all up, and then roll the turf back, so it's nicely flows on. Go.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, later in the podcast, we're going to get a few jobs from Martin. But first, we're going to look at some listeners' questions. And just a quick plug then, if you've got a question, drop us an email, info@potsandtrowels.com. And we do try and answer as many of them as we can on the podcast. So where are we going to start? Have you got one there, Jill?
I have. Shall we start with Sally? Sally is in Wakefield, and she's sent us some pictures, which is great. Thank you, Sally, for that. It's an ornamental cherry tree. She pruned it quite hard a couple of years ago as it became quite overgrown and untidy, and it has started to grow again, but she's noticed a white furry substance on it. Any ideas what it is and what I should do? And she does just say she loves the YouTubes and the podcast, podcasts, and you are going to see her in the garden, in their gardening club.
Oh, am I?
In Wakefield.
In Wakefield.
Yes.
Oh, right. Oh, God, I'm going to.
Flockton in
Oh,
Wakefield.
right. Yes.
Wakefield, Wakefield in Yorkshire in the UK for people around
Yes,
the world.
that's
Flockton.
in October.
Very good. Yeah, look forward to seeing it. You, Sally. And well, the problem with your cherry tree is you've got a problem. It's a pest, actually. It looks a bit like a fungus, a white fungus, but it's actually caused by a pest called woolly aphid. And woolly aphid is a little aphid that sucks the sap. And these live on the bark of trees. You get them on lots of fruit trees and ornamentals. And they basically get into crevices within the bark and they can suck the sap and they feed. But to protect themselves, because they're quite exposed, they cover themselves in this like a woolly substance, hence the name woolly aphid. So it's a protection, really. Keeps predators away from them. Controlling them isn't the easiest thing. We've had it on apple trees in the past before. What I tend to do, and on yours I think it might be easier because they're on the old bark, a really quick fix is to get your hose pipe with a strong jet of water, put your thumb over the end or put it on this and just blast them off, and it really is quite satisfying to blast them off.
Sounds like fun.
It is fun. Wear a caggle while you're doing it, and that will temporarily get rid, but you'll never get rid of all of them. So the ones that are still there will then carry on breeding and they will come back, but it's a quick fix. On an old tree it's not that much of a problem. On a young tree it does all cause like warty growths and it can weaken it, so it's good to control them. You could use a spray if you want. Don't use anything persistent necessarily. I would use one of the contact ones, one of the organic ones that's pyrethrum or fatty acids, and direct it onto those clumps where you've got that woolly, cotton woolly, fluffy stuff. But normally a strong jet of water, you'll get rid of a lot of them.
If you've got younger children in a family, could you do it with those water guns? You know, because they're so powerful now, aren't they? Some of them.
Because our boys would really enjoy this job. And my worry would be the mess afterwards. The tree or the shrub would look fantastic. It's just what's behind it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You'd have to put it in the middle of the lawn or something if it was in a pot, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But also you don't want to spray it so that they go on to something else.
That's right, or over the hedge to the neighbours.
Oh dear. Should we have another question?
Oh, go on, let's do it. Yeah, we've got quite a few.
We've got one from Judy in Flaxby. Judy purchased a shrub. She sent a picture about 4 weeks ago. Looked very healthy and the flowers had a lovely scent. Potted it up. It's a Daphne Eternal Fragrance. Potted it up according to the instructions, but in the last 2 weeks, leaves are dropping and she doesn't know what she's done wrong. It's not been short of water or exposed to any frost. It faces southeast, so it's in the shade from about 2 p.m. Is it the pot or is it the morning sun? Would appreciate your help. And apparently you answered some questions for her on Radio York. So she misses that gardening programme, but luckily she found us here at Pots Trowels.
Oh, right. Oh, that's
and she
really
says
nice.
That's not me saying luckily. We think it's lucky that you found us on Pots Trowels.
Yes, thank you, Judy. And I also miss our Sunday morning phone-ins on Radio York, but things have changed, haven't they? So I'm glad you found us on the podcast, which is great. And it's a lovely shrub, Daphne Eternal Fragrance. We've got one in our shrubs to plant round the patio.
Have we?
It has a wonderful fragrance.
Not too tall then.
No, it's quite a low growing one. It will only probably grow to maximum 3 feet tall.
Okay.
So it's a nice compact one.
Right.
And it's called Eternal Fragrance because it has a long flowering season. It will flower from spring right the way through till the autumn, small, delicate, sort of pinky tinged flowers.
Perfect.
It doesn't look too bad. I've looked at the photographs, Judy, so I wouldn't worry too much. Sometimes when you take them out the pot you buy them in and put them in a bigger container, they get this little bit of what we call transplant shock, and it's just settling in. So as long as you've used a good quality compost, keep it moist but not wet. And what I would probably do is give it a liquid feed if you've got any seaweed or any liquid feed that even, tomato fertiliser that you feed your tomatoes with or your hanging baskets. Maybe just once a week give it a feed. That will just help it settle in and I'm sure it will be fine. And then, hopefully start to flower and do well. My only slight concern is long term. The container you've put it in, the nice decorative container, doesn't look very big. And I'm not sure that it will survive in that for more than a few years. So you probably would then need to go into a bigger container. But I think to keep it moist, a bit more feed, and I'm sure it will perk up.
Excellent. Good advice. Well, we've got a couple of questions from Andrea. Do you want to do one, Jill, and I'll do the other one? How's that?
Yeah, that's fine. So hi, Andrea. Andrea is one of our regular listeners from Lancashire. And she knows that you love your trees, Martin.
I do.
So hoping that you can give us some advice on what to do with one of her Rowans. So she sent a photo as well. It was growing really nice and upright. It's quite a wispy tree. and they put it in the garden there to hope that it would hide the neighbour's upstairs window.
I hope they're not listening.
But they've had a lot of heavy rain and winds last week. Snap, Andrea. And it's now bent right over. It hasn't snapped. Sorry, that was me saying snap. Do you think it will straighten up? Andrea doesn't think it will. Do you think it'll straighten up on its own, or is this now its new natural sort of habit? Can she straighten it using canes higher up the trunk, or is she best leaving it alone?
Okay, yes, I've seen the photograph, and it's a straight, nice stem on this Rowan mountain ash, which is a British native, Sorbus orchiparia. Nice tree, good for wildlife, flowers, berries. So it's got lots going for it.
Hiding neighbours' windows.
Hiding neighbours' windows as well, exactly. I think what's happened is it's probably this year trees have made a spurt of growth, quite soft growth, and I think then the wind and the weight of the rain on the foliage has bent it over, so it is sort of arching over. I don't think it will go back. I agree with you. I think what I would do is get a long thin cane that goes a bit further up than the one at the moment, and just tie it to it with a bit of string to straighten it up, and then as it grows the girth of that stem will thicken out, and eventually after a year or two it will be self-supporting. So
it's like a splint.
Yeah, it is essentially. You've got to hold it in place to do that. And the other thing I would do to help it establish, and this applies to all trees, I notice you've got grass around the base of it. What's a good idea with a tree when it's young? It doesn't want the competition. The grass is taking moisture and nutrients around from where the root ball is. So what I would do is create a circle, a clear circle, probably a couple of feet maximum in diameter, sort of 18 inches, 45 centimetres or 60 centimetres, 2 feet in diameter around the base of your tree, that has not got any weeds, any grass, anything growing in it, so that water and nutrients can get down to the roots. And I think you'll find then it will grow much better as well.
And I remember on an early video that we did where you created kind of a dish around the base of a tree so that when you watered it, it made the roots go down. Is that something as well to think about?
Yeah, if we get a dry time, yes, we did. I can't remember what the tree was, but it was a tree in the garden, and we were having some very dry weather a couple of summers ago. We haven't had a dry summer for a couple of years. But I sort of scalloped it out slightly so that when you watered it, instead of the water running away, it concentrated it around the base of the tree. So just a little shallow depression. But, Lancashire gets a fair bit of rain, and I think Andrea's got quite a heavy soil, so should be all right. But even so, young trees still need watering for the first season or two to get them established. So yeah, well done, Sean. You remembered that one.
I'm retaining some information. Yeah. So Andrea had another question. In fact, she sent it as a separate email, and she says that she hopes that you had a good time at Chelsea, you two, and poor Sean leaving him at home. Well, I was watching the photos with some envy, Anyway, Andrea is concerned about Eve. So,
Viburnum tinus Eve. Yes.
Eve Prince, right. Okay, see photos. So she sent some photos. Does she look happy? Obviously, Eve is the name of this plant. Does she look happy / normal to you? I fed her in spring and mulched, but some of her leaves are yellowing, and she hasn't flowered since last year when I bought her from a local garden centre full of flowers. I did trim her sometime after flowering to keep the shape. Did I trim it too late and cut this year's flowering bits off? It's facing southeast. Does she need to feed it more or water more? She's loving the podcast, and now she listens via Spotify so that she can send us reviews.
I hope they're good ones, Andrea.
She might see you at Tatton, apparently.
Oh, good.
Right. Yeah, we'll be there.
Yes, come say hello, Andrea.
Say hello. Yes, this is a shrub Andrea's got. It's called Viburnum tinus, and it's the cultivar is Eve, which is a lovely flowering form. Normally grows as quite a big shrub, but this one, looking at the photographs, has been trained as a standard, as you would think of like a bay standard. So you've got that lollipop head on a straight stem, and it looks fine. I think trimming it might have delayed flowering a little bit, but all Viburnum tinus will flower on new wood. In fact, they'll often flower for quite a lot of the year. They're one of those that you keep getting bursts of flower. They don't have a set flowering time. They often have flowers on sort of 9-10 months of the year, which is good. I think what I would do with yours, if you've already trimmed it and it looks like it's got a nice shape on it, I would leave that now, and I would feed it. The leaves don't look as dark green and glossy as they normally would do if they're growing in the garden. So it might be that it just needs a bit more feed. And obviously in a container, you're going to have to keep it well watered. and I would feed it on a regular basis. Either use one of the slow release granule fertilizers that you could sprinkle on the top, they will dissolve over the summer, or when you water, give it a liquid feed at the same time. And I think that will green it up, and I'm sure later on in the season you'll get flowers. And I think after that, to keep that shape, I would probably go for one trim a year, just to keep the shape, and then it allows it to make some extension growth that will flower, and then after it's flowered you can take it off. So a bit more trimming involved, but lovely shrub.
Okay. Good.
Now,
the video that we've just put out on YouTube was revisiting our Bramley apple tree in our garden, because we did one in the winter about pruning it and getting it into a sort of reasonable shape and size, because it was really, really overgrown. And we've revisited this week in our video because there were lots of water shoots appearing on it, which we all know about now because we've watched the video. So thank you for that, Martin. Had me climbing up a ladder with the camera, which was a little bit scary, but you can see that
and safety
action on YouTube. But we've had a couple of questions on the back of that. So the first one was about the water shoots that we actually took off. Can you use those as cutting?
Right, good question that is. First of all, if anybody's not sure what a water shoot is, when you prune like an apple, for example, in this case hard back into the old wood, obviously you've got a very established root system and it wants to replace that growth, so it puts on these strong shoots, and we call them water shoots in the trade. And what happens is if you leave them on, they just go too big and make a tangled mess again. So we were taking them off. So the question is, can you use them for cuttings? I wouldn't do, because I don't think you'll be able to get them to root. But having said that, apple root stocks that we graft onto are taken as cuttings, but they take them as a hardwood cutting in the winter, and they have a lot of base heat to promote the root. So I think those soft shoots that I've taken off, although if you could root them you would have an apple tree, I think the likelihood of them rooting is very, very unlikely. So have a go, but I don't think they will.
Okay. And have you got the other question, Sean, from
Yeah,
Manuel?
the other question was from Manuel Silva over in California. Thank you for the video. I didn't know these shoots would take energy away from the fruits. Is it also the same for all fruiting trees? Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, they will take energy from the fruit because and the rest of the tree, because what the tree is doing is using all its energy, or as much of energy as possible, to replace the growth we've cut off. So by taking off the water shoots as they grow, it just means that energy can be used to make extension growth that we want, but also direct it to the fruit. So it just helps the tree regulate its growth better by taking them off.
Well, remember, if you've got a question for Martin, I was going to say all the team, but I won't be answering it.
You can do.
Well, we can try.
Look, I'm getting better. better. Drop us an email, info@potsandtrowels.com, or leave a message on one of our videos like Manuel did. And I think it was Ian who left the other question. That's from memory, though, so if it's not Ian, sorry.
If we do get questions for Sean, you could do the technical side, the camera, the audio side. Jill, you can do any cookery ones. So, we can extend this, and then I can get a break.
If you're wanting to know how to do good photographs of your fruit, veg, flowers, I can help out with that. That's
Exactly.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Shall we get back to find out some top tips about patios from Adam?
Yeah.
Adam, over the 30 odd years you've been landscaping, I suppose the choice of materials that people are using now to lay paths and patios and driveways have changed considerably. So, what was it like when you started, and what sort of products are you using now?
Well, basically it goes through trends. I mean, when we very first started, obviously the concrete 2x2, the back killer was readily available, and which is obviously not as much. But then the decorative stone has really taken off. Indian York is a favourite on the older properties, as porcelain is on the more modern property. And, we get to lay all aspects of slabs, and I think that sometimes the choice is too varied now because everybody has their own tastes.
I suppose so, and like you say, though, there was such a huge range, isn't it, in the different stones and the porcelain, which is very, very, almost you'd expect it to see it in a kitchen. It's very smooth, isn't it? Does that work practically outside?
Yeah, I think they've designed, the ones that they've been designed for outside, outdoor spaces, because people now have outdoor kitchens and jacuzzis and swimming pools and all that type of thing. So from that aspect, the product works well. And the ones we've laid, I mean, there are, again, different qualities, but luckily for us, we work at more probably the high-end side of the market. So from that perspective, we have the nicer products.
But, some of those porcelain pavers are big, and, you can't have a half-inch lip. It must be quite difficult to get them completely flat.
Well, they look...
Without giving away trade secrets, of course.
Indeed, but they look flat, but there's always a little bit of movement in them. But you just basically have to make sure your sub-base is set correct and know where you're starting from and have your levels. I mean, as you say, nowadays, not only the products, obviously today we have laser levels, which we didn't have when I first started, and them type of things, and they all aid in the help of doing it. You just sometimes have to slow down, take your time and make sure the job's right.
Yeah, but you must have an eye for a level, because you've been doing some work for us for the last few days in our garden, laying some paving a patio, which looks beautiful. I am going to pay you as well for it, don't worry. But, straight away you were saying, oh, that corner's low, that needs filling, and you must have almost like a built-in spirit level in your head.
Well, sadly, I'm not as young as I used to be, and obviously things like this, when you're working with the products daily, you do get to have an eye for, certain things as you walk into a garden. Your mind's already racing away thinking, where will I start? What's the low point? Where will the water go? So, that is just, I think, over the years of experience, it comes to you. And obviously the products I've laid over the years, the more and more you lay, the better you'd like to think you get at it.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's practice, isn't it? And just, you know exactly how to handle it. I'm interested. I haven't seen the garden where you are now. I remember the garden you lived in many years ago. So what's your paving? And do you change it on a regular basis? Or, do you feel you've got to keep changing it? Or do you put it down good quality, it will last forever?
I think in my own garden, I'm sort of in an older property in the countryside, so I have my personally laid Indian York. I have a pond with a water feature with stone, and not a lot of lawn because I've got a few acres of horses and stuff around and about me. So from that perspective, it's quite a low maintenance garden, cottage garden type thing. And then Sundays is my busman's holiday when I've done everybody else's all week.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So I know you like to keep it tidy. You like a stripe on your lawn, don't you?
I do like a stripe on my lawn. I'm known for it in Norrell.
Yes, well, mine's not got a defined stripe because I haven't got the cylinder mower out yet, but I'm hoping to do it later on this season. So just to finish us off, Adam, tips on maintaining a patio. If you've got an existing patio, how can people keep it clean? Because with all this wet weather that we've had, they do get sort of mossy and green, and you get this, to call it like a black spot on, don't you? So any tips on keeping them in good condition?
I think of modern times, again, there are products out there now that you can buy that you can pre-spray onto the paving that lifts algae, black spot, etc. And then you don't have to jet wash to its maximum potential so that it washes all the pointing, etc. It's sometimes nicer to have a product to lift it and then not such a heavy with a jet wash.
I'm glad you've said that, because Jill loves a jet washer. In fact, she's trying to persuade me to buy her a new one. And I'm thinking she's got a birthday coming up. Maybe that could be, but not very romantic. But she will jet wash and jet wash and jet wash. So really not too heavy is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think if you went, some of the products are that good these days that if left on, they'll lift the algae, etc., off the slab, and then you can mist over it with water as opposed to blast it, and it still has the outcome you'd probably like to see.
And what about the pointing? Because in time, especially the old-fashioned mortar pointing tends to crack and sink and come out. So, any tips on it, keeping the pointing in good condition, or how to repoint a patio? Because if you've got an old patio, sometimes cleaning it and repointing it makes it look wonderful again.
Yeah, it does give it a lift. I mean, there are many different products now to point with, from slurries to other products that you put on in brushing, but we still tend to iron them in to make sure it's firm. And occasionally you still do the traditional type of pointing. If that's the necessary way of doing it with the quality of the slab that's there. And then obviously with the porcelain, it's more of a grout these days, which tends to stay in that little bit better anyway. But all of them, a lot of them are brushing now, but as I say, my tip would be still to iron it in so that it stays quite firm, and then hopefully if you're not jet washing it too hard, you'll always get a little bit come out. but hopefully not all of it.
Yeah, I mean, when you say brushing, that's not. I mean, I can remember, donkeys years ago, you would mix a dry mix of sand and cement and brush it in, and it would set hard. That's not what you're talking about when you say brushing, is it?
No, I'm talking about the products like they've got silica in now that you basically make your patio area moist, and then brush it over, and then just iron it in a way, let it dry a little bit, and then sweep it off. And there are several different products that you can get to do that type of thing these days. And some are better than others, but sometimes it's trial and error to see which one you get on best with.
Yeah, and that's what you've been using here, and it does look amazing. I've never actually used it on a patio before, and I think it looks brilliant. So, right, well, we've talked long enough because your mate's finishing off the pointing, so we can go and have a cup of tea and watch him finish it.
That would be an excellent idea. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Poor Gavin, bless him. You left him working away. He was working really hard. And I felt so sorry for him because he was on his knees in shorts doing all the grouting. And when he got up, his knees were red raw, bless him. And he said
Why has he not got these knee pads?
No.
Most people who do that sort of work have plastic knee.
I know, because I offered him my kneeler as well. He wouldn't take that. But he said he'd done a really big job a few weeks ago.
A big turfing job.
Yeah, that's right. And his knees were red. I think he actually said they were bleeding by the end of it.
I did tell him off for that because he'd laid 500 square metres of turf, and he's got blisters on his knees. And I said, you shouldn't kneel down when you're laying turf. You should be able to do it all in the standing position. I speak from experience on that one. So I'm going to have to give him a lesson on doing it from a stand. Yeah, he's young and daft.
He'll suffer when he gets to our age.
Yeah, but it was interesting. He was talking as well about pointing up. In my head, it's like grout in between tiles, but it's called pointing, is it?
Yeah,
because we've got this problem. Our grout or pointing has all kind of mostly disappeared from our. We've got York stone here, and we have a Victorian house, so it's kind of in keeping, much as Adam was talking about in the chat you had with him. But so I'm interested in this. But what's the ironing bit? I didn't get that. I mean, what's that?
Yes, it's I don't know much about ironing.
No, you don't.
But this is what it is. It's basically when he's putting in the pointing or the grout, as you call it, but it is pointing. So you get a gap between the paving slabs when they're laid, and you want to fill those gaps. Years ago we used to use sand and cement, but now they use this new ready mix silicone base that dries to look like a sandy cement. It's good. Some people just brush it in, water it, and it settles, but Adam likes to make sure it gets right down. So when they first brush it in as a wet solution, they've got imagine a trowel without the trowel bit on. It's got a thin blade, almost like a butter knife type of thing, or a fish knife. Just the width of the gap, and they can push it down. So it's an iron, like a grouting iron. So they push it down, firm that in, and then they can brush more on the top. So the idea is you don't get any gaps and voids underneath that will settle at a later date. It's solid all the way from the sub base or the concrete up to the top.
It's less likely to come out though now, isn't it, the pointing, because in when you were laying lots of patios, and probably when yours was laid as well, they only used to put blobs of cement, didn't they? Whereas now they do the whole
solid bed.
It's a solid base, so the pointing hasn't got anywhere to go. Whereas
yes, it is. I mean, when I was at college, we did paving, and you would put, for paving slab, you'd put 5 blobs, one in each corner, one in the middle, put it on, tamp it down level, and then you would have lots of voids underneath that it could wash to. But what they do now,
I pointed our old patio.
You did. You're very
Yorkshire,
good at it.
I? And it took ages to kind of feed it all through, and it was just going into nothing really.
So what they've done on this one, the modern technique is they dig the ground out to get it level, then they put their sub base down, which is a crushed road stone, so about 100 mil, 4 inches. Then that's whackered down, so you've got a really firm base with a very small fall away from the house. And then they put, I think they use a 40 millimetre bed of cement.
Oh, like a screed almost.
The screed, and then they put them on those, tamp them down. And they also put a sealer on the back of the slab so that it almost like glues it to
Yeah.
that cement, so it stops
Yeah.
it popping off in frosty weather. So you are on a solid bed of concrete essentially, so then you've only got the gaps to fill in between, so
Yeah.
there's no voids that it can go. So it made a really good job. Yeah, I might even pay him.
I think you should.
Well, it's reduced my workload over the summer because jet washing has always been one of my first jobs of the sort of early spring, so I haven't got to do that now.
Now I've got to
So,
think of a new birthday present for you now. haven't
Yeah.
I? That's right.
Yeah.
No, I was worried that's what got rid of our grout in the first place, if I'm honest,
Yeah.
jet
Yeah.
washing. We don't do
Yeah.
it very often, but once in a while, things get green and algae or whatever
Yeah.
it is builds up on the stones and we
Yeah.
think, oh, let's get it nice and clean. But yeah.
Exactly.
And
So-
it's really, I love doing it. It's
It is
really
quite
satisfying,
satisfying.
isn't it, when you reveal
Yeah,
that
yeah.
gorgeous
Yeah.
clean
It
slab.
is. Well, on the job front, following on from
Yeah.
Adam's patio special this week, I think it is a good time to spruce your patio up. If you clean it, don't over jet wash it, as he said, but you can get patio cleaners. So if your patio is looking a bit grubby at the moment, now's the time to get it ready for summer, because we are going to get some summer
We are.
eventually in the UK, I'm sure. So give it a good spruce up and get a few patio containers on it. Ours is looking very bare, but by the time we've got a few containers with some shrubby plants in and some seasonal colour on there, it will look absolutely great and it will soften the edges.
But top tip, to avoid those green circles on your patio, if you put your pot directly onto the patio, then you always get those green circles by the end of the summer.
You do.
So try and lift your pot up a little bit, so you can get all sorts of products. We've often used just little chunks of wood, haven't we, to lift them up? But there is a product called Pot Mate, which is great. It's a sort of plastic circle made from recycled plastic, and that will lift your pots up to the 2 or 3 different sizes, so you can match them with your pots.
Exactly.
And it lifts it up. It lets the water come out through the bottom because of the clever shaping, so you don't get the green circles on
There
your
you
patio.
go. You ought to be on a shopping channel, Mrs. Fish. There you go. So yeah, to get your patio sorted so you can enjoy it. Do a little bit of deadheading. Our roses in the garden, it's the first year they've been planted. We've had some lovely, lovely blooms. Quite early this year they were, but the first flush has gone. So we're out deadheading so that it'll encourage new growth and new flowers that will take us then through the summer. So that's something you can do little and often. And then finally, now's the time, if you've got the foliage still of your daffodils that flowered back in March and April time, they will have almost died down now. And once those leaves have gone yellowy brown, which they have done, they're no good to the bulb. So get rid of them because they look tatty in the borders. So, go around with a trug, get rid of all those, stick them on the compost heap and forget about them till they pop up next year. So yeah, and enjoy your garden.
Well, just on the subject of those dead bits of daffodils, a few podcasts ago I mentioned how we had an old apple tree and then every year the spring comes and things come up. But I tried to grass over it thinking, oh, that's fine, we'll just put grass over it. And of course, it doesn't work. So I spent last weekend digging out the bulbs
right.
and there were dozens.
Oh,
right.
Surprising,
And
isn't it?
well, I was going to ask that: do they propagate, or have all these bulbs at some point been planted?
They do multiply. So if you plant a single daffodil bulb, within 2 years, 3, 4 years, dig it up, you'll have a clump of half a dozen. So yeah, they produce what we call daughter bulbs. At the side of the main bulb, a small bulb will develop at the base, and that will grow big, and then that will produce a daughter bulb, and so it continues. So, and have you planted them in another border in the garden, Sean?
I've put them in a pot ready to put them somewhere else. So our
Yeah.
garden isn't very large, so we haven't got a huge amount of place to put them. But we are going to put them somewhere. But we had some small brown ones, some large white ones. I think there's bluebells, there's daffodils, there's all sorts. So we've got
Excellent.
lots of options,
Yeah.
and I've tried to grass seed over it. I know it's not really the time of year to grass seed over it, but anyway,
No, well, if you keep it
we'll see what
watered,
happens.
it'll come.
We'll see what happens, yeah. But
Right.
I got a new spade for my birthday, so I was very excited.
That shows you're getting to a certain age when you get a spade for your birthday.
Significant birthday, yeah. Anyway, let's not talk about that.
No.
That's about it for today, isn't it?
It is,
think
yeah.
it is.
Shall we do it all again next week?
Yeah.
We'll
Why
see
not?
you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Watch the videos on YouTube or Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter or X, and subscribe to the podcast and never miss a thing. For more information, go to potsandtrowels.com.